Hi, it's Karn, middle initial A, Erlinson, and I'm one of the science educators at the Air Zoo. Today I'm really excited to bring you a video that combines three things that I love: biology, codes, and origami. So if you want to learn how to write the initials of your name in DNA code, keep watching. My initials are KAE, and so here is what that looks like in DNA code. Kind of looks like gibberish, doesn't it? But actually, it's this really cool mechanism for taking just four simple bases, A, T, G, and C, and turning it into instructions to make everything. Let me explain a little bit more. All right, so in a previous video where we extracted DNA from a strawberry, I showed you a model of DNA. So remember, DNA is like a twisted ladder. The sides of the ladder are repeating sugar phosphate groups. So sugar phosphate, sugar phosphate, sugar phosphate on both sides of the ladder. And it's the rungs of the ladder that have the coding information. So that's where the A's, T's, G's, and C's are. And those two strands help the DNA to be more robust as a molecule and also less error prone. So here's a picture of that model to help jog your memory. So how does the body take those four bases and turn them into the instructions for everything? The answer to that is protein. So we think of protein typically as something that you need to eat to be healthy, but protein in your body does so much more. So some proteins in your body are more structural or mechanical, like the proteins in your heart muscle or your arm muscle or the keratin in your fingernails. Other proteins are enzymes. So enzymes help chemical reactions go faster. So enzymes might help break down the food in your body. They also can be used to make copies of DNA when you're growing, because each cell needs a new packet of DNA. There are also proteins in your body that transport things, that move things around. So the hemoglobin in your blood that carries oxygen is an example of that kind of protein. Some proteins in your body are for protection. So there's a group of proteins called antibodies that help fight infections in your body. And there are also other kinds of proteins that act kind of like traffic cops. So they help the body either make more of a protein or not stop making a protein. There are all kinds of functions for protein in the body, and that is what the DNA is coding, the instructions to make proteins. So what is a protein? So proteins are molecules that are made up of amino acids. So the amino acid is the subunit of the protein. There's a chain of amino acids that are linked together to make a protein. There are 20 basic types of amino acids, and I have a table here that shows the list. Let's zoom up on the table. So as I said, there's 20 basic amino acids, and they are given single letter abbreviations. And so this, a link for this particular table will also be in the notes in this video. So a typical protein would be made up of about 400 amino acids linked together. And the proteins can fold in all kinds of cool ways depending on which amino acids are next to each other. So for fun, what I did is I actually folded some models to show individual amino acids, really just for fun. So for example, the amino acid histidine, which is abbreviated with the letter H, I made this heart. We have our leucine ladybug. This one is an Arctic fox for alanine. Here we have phenylalanine, which is actually spelled with a PH, but fish is representing that amino acid. We have an E for glutamic acid. And then finally, we have a koala for the amino acid lysine. So these are just a few of the 20 different amino acids that your body uses to make protein. So now let's go back to the logistics of the code. It's really ingenious. So again, we just have those four basic bases, A, T, G, C, and what the body does is it actually takes those nucleotides and it groups them in groups of 3. So if you take 3 amino acids, or 3, bases together, that gives you 64 different combinations. So there's 64 different ways to group in groups of 3. Each group of 3 is called a codon. So in my example, this group of 3 bases, AAG, gets read, and then that gets turned into the amino acid lysine. GCT, that particular codon, gets turned into the amino acid alanine. And GAG, that particular group, that codon, gets turned into E, the amino acid glutamic acid. It's a really ingenious way to take just 4 simple bases and turn it into the instructions to make 20 amino acids. Now we're in the explanation home stretch. So I want to tell you how the body gets from the DNA to the protein in the simplest, most origami way possible. So I folded a few more origamis to represent that. So here is one strand of my DNA. And this is showing the bases that would code for the 3 initials, KAE. All right, so here's one strand. Obviously this isn't structurally accurate, but it was kind of a fun way to show the coding information. So that's one strand of our DNA, and of course DNA has 2 strands. So let me unravel that one. All right, so here's 2 strands of my DNA, and what the body does when a particular protein is needed, the section of coding information, the gene that encodes that protein, a bunch of copies of it are made. And these are single-stranded copies. Here's one. Two. And 3. Voila. So these are single-stranded copies, and they're actually a molecule called messenger RNA. They're very similar to DNA. One of the differences is that they're single-stranded instead of double-stranded. And then another difference is that where there would have been a T in the DNA molecule, let's see, for example here, that's the yellow in my DNA, that is replaced with a U, a uracil in the messenger RNA. So very similar otherwise. And normally in your body, rather than just 3 messenger RNA molecules, there'd be thousands of these that would be made. And so these messenger RNAs then go to the protein making apparatus in your body, and that's where those codons are read. So again, 3 bases at a time are read to figure out which amino acid goes where in the protein. Cool, right? All right, so that tells you the basic steps behind how coding works, how the DNA code works, and then how the body takes the code and turns it into proteins. Let me go back to the beginning and explain how you could write your initials in DNA code. So again, you'll start with this chart that has the abbreviations for the different amino acids. So in my particular case, my first initial is K. That's the amino acid lysine. The 3 DNA bases that encode lysine are AAG. So I would write that down on a piece of paper, and then I would proceed and do each of my 3 initials. So here's my example that I showed you at the beginning. So you'll write that first strand of your DNA based on the information in that table, and then if you want to be complete, you can write the second strand of DNA underneath. And remember, A always pairs with T, and G always pairs with C. So it's a pretty simple exercise to figure out what the code of the second strand would be. So that's all there is to it. You can do it too. So give it a try and have fun coding. Happy sciencing.